Welcome to this BEC webinar. My name is Rasmus Beck and I'm the Communication Manager at Badminton Europe. Thanks for joining the webinar where we today will be talking about planning your communication. Today's topics will be how to build a communicating organization, how to plan your organization, event communication and local communication. And let's just jump to it, because the most important thing is that you have a very clear plan. What is it that you actually want to do with your communication, and who are you targeting? How much and how often should you actually communicate? That's also one of the things that we will be touching today, and which is also very important for you to have in your plan. Responsibility, of course, is a big thing. Who is actually leading your communication? Who's taking care of whatever purpose you might actually find? Who is going to be the leader of your communication, and who is going to provide the content? Delivering content, creating content is equally important as the leading part. And remember, most of you are a bigger team than just one person. So if you want to actually make a good communication, you need to figure out who's doing what, when, and how. A clear plan needs a purpose. So what is the main purpose of your communication? That's one of the things that you need to ask yourself while you're building your communicating organization. You need to figure out who are the target. What's your target? Are there more than one? Are we talking about one target only? Most probably not. Most communication have more than one target, and your organization for sure has more than one target for your communication, because there are different targets for different products. The unknown target group is the important one, and we will come back to that one because that's quite important, because there's always one you do not know who will be your target. The frequency, that's a question I get asked a lot. How often should we actually publish something on our social media? And the easy answer is, it demands on the manpower you have in your organization. If you have 6 employees, it's fair to say that you need to produce more than if you're 1, and vice versa. And content is not equal on all platforms, and that's also important to remember, and I will also come back to that, because if you have some kind of content produced, it's not necessarily meaning that it actually goes on your social media. So let's come back to that later. The purpose of your communication, as I said, was what do you actually want? Do you want to have likes on your social media? Do you want to share information with your stakeholders? Do you want to give away free stuff? That could be a racket, that could be tickets, that could be basically whatever. Do you want to entertain? Or do you actually want to sell a product? Or do you want all of it? That's the questions you need to figure out. What is it that's the most important for us? And there's not something that is the most important, because it depends on the platform. If you have a website, yes, it might be important for you to share information, but the same information doesn't necessarily go to your Facebook, or to your Instagram, or to your TikTok, if you have a TikTok. I assume that most of you don't, and I'm not saying that you should, but you just need to remember, a different platform for a different purpose. And remember that content is not for everyone. Nobody cares about everything. That's the brutal honesty here. I might not care about something that was posted on Instagram, but my sister might. Your best friend might care a lot about what's happening on the website in terms of whatever news that you can produce, but you might not yourself. It's not for everyone, and you need to accept that. And it's okay to not please everybody. You need to know and you're nice to know is not necessarily the same thing. That's also why prioritizing is important. If you are a small organization, you look at the need to know and you figure out what is the absolutely most important thing that we want to communicate, and then you put all your effort into that. There will always be a nice to know. And the nice to know is what actually can give you the easy wins on your social media. It could be something that pleases the few, but you need to figure out what are you actually going to do. And remember, content is not for everyone. You need to prioritize. So a few takeaways here. You do not only have one purpose around your communication. Accept that everything is not relevant for everybody. Target groups can be difficult to handle because you will have a different target group for every single activity that you have. I will give you a few examples now. For instance, for a coach course, who is the target group for a coach course? That's of course the coaches, but could it also be players who want a more educated coach? Could it also be parents for younger kids who want to coach their kids or their friends of the kids? Could it be the clubs? Yes, it could. Could it also be the regions? Yes, it could. Meaning that just by a simple brainstorm here, I found at least 5 different target groups. Not saying that you need to pick one of these, because they are, in my opinion, equally important. Because if you are a coach caused by the name of what it actually is, the activity, is actually aware that, okay, this is for me. So maybe actually put an effort in to say, okay, you're a player, do you want a better coach? He has the chance to attend this activity. Or the parents, or whoever that could be. Or could it be everyone else? That's the question up to you. And I'm sure that if you are working within this area every single day, you know way better than I do what could be the target group. And sometimes it's important to find that unknown, as I said before. The unknown target, that's the one where you actually make the big difference, because everybody can figure out that for clubs and for coaches, a promotion of a coach course is quite important. But what if you could actually enroll more people into your course if you find that secret unknown target? Let's take another example. A summer camp. For the players, of course. For parents, yes, because if you don't get the parents go for it, the player will for sure not go if we're talking about a kid here. What about the coaches? They want to send their players to the camp. Makes perfectly sense. These 3 are the easy ones. Clubs and regions, the same. What about teachers? Could it be a good idea for a teacher in his gym class to say, if you want to play badminton this summer, you actually have the opportunity to join this national camp, this local camp, this the club camp, whatever camp that could be. I think it would actually be quite interesting to see an approach to teachers. And what about siblings to players? Let's just be honest here. Siblings do not get along all the time. Would it be cool to send the little brother or the little sister on a badminton camp so you could have your parents for yourself for a week? I think a lot of kids would actually agree on this. And that's nothing to do with not loving your siblings, but it might actually be a way to actually also say, hey, mom and dad, couldn't it be cool for Pete to go on this camp? This is, again, just 6 ideas from the top of my head, and I'm sure that you can find even more. Key takeaways on the target groups: there's always more than one. And remember that when you communicate, because it actually matters on how you communicate, because the way you write to a coach is not the same way you write to a parent, to a teacher, to a sibling, to a player, and whoever might be in that group. And that could be basically everybody. So find your target and fit your communication and the organization, and spend your resources of what you find most important. The frequency is, of course, also important. And if you look at the screen right now, you will see a lot of different platforms. And I'm pretty sure you most know a lot of these. Of course, the top one, Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. Most people know that. TikTok is getting more and more popular. But this is actually just to show that you have a lot of different options. And your frequency in your communication all comes down to how much manpower do you actually have. Because if you have 2 people working within communication, you can set a goal of using this and that platform. If you have 1, it might be fewer. If you have 6 employees, it will of course be different. If you have one who's totally dedicated only to do social media work, it's also fair to say that she should handle more than one platform, but 5 platforms might be way too much, just to take an example here. The well-known platforms for you guys are for sure the website. People are involved in the sport will always go to your website because they know where to go and find their information. These are the people you already know. Facebook, that's for everybody. You know that. I'm sure that 99% of you guys are actually on Facebook, and I would be surprised if the last 1% haven't heard about Facebook before. Instagram used to be for the younger generation, but that generation is growing older, and that's typically for the social media. Facebook was also for the younger ones in the beginning, before we had Snapchat, before we had Instagram, before we had TikTok. Then the adults joined, then the grandparents joined. Now we see that they actually also move towards the parents on Instagram. So this generation is growing older, and that's exactly why TikTok and Twitter came in. Twitter is for the news freaks, and there's no doubt that if you are on Twitter, you are there to get the fast news and maybe comment on it, and that's for the freaks, meant positively, of course. YouTube, that's for the video fans. That's all you get on YouTube, that's video. And of course TikTok, that's the younger generation's tool right now. But again, you will see, maybe sooner than later, that the old generation will also adapt to TikTok, because TikTok has another tool, has another option to actually show something that you do not see on the other platforms. If you haven't seen what TikTok is, I will recommend that you take a look, maybe just to be inspired on what kind of content you can actually produce, also to hit a younger audience. Download the TikTok app, take a look. We are not involved with TikTok, of course, or any other platform. So there's no advert in this, but go take a look, find some inspiration. That goes for every single platform. Inspiration is never a bad thing. But the purpose of the platform, that's where it's important, because the website, that's for information sharing. And when I say information sharing, it's not only like dates and this is us and remember to sign up. It's also news. It's whatever actually happened within your organization, activities and so on. Facebook is basically a link converter, and that's everybody's platform, so to speak. Everybody's on Facebook, and it's a good way to actually get a lead into your platform, if that's being a link, if that's being a picture, if that's being a video or a graphic or whatever you can come up on. Instagram, that's basically funny and cozy and likable content. There's nothing dramatic about Instagram. It's the platform where you scroll down when you have 10 minutes just to see some nice pictures and some nice videos. Maybe also a lighter information channel, which could be, for instance, wow, we have a summer camp this summer, check out our website. Something similar to that. You cannot link within the text of Instagram, unless you do it in the story. So it's not a link converter in the same way as Facebook. Twitter, as I said, news and breaking, that's all the purpose of Twitter. YouTube, that's video on demand and streaming. That's basically what you get there. And TikTok, that's a fun way to waste time, basically. Of course, it's also a way to put in advertisements for personal branding and such, but most people use it for basically for entertainment. So, how to use the different platforms. For instance, Facebook. Tell your community what you want to do and what you're doing, and let them be inspired. Show is always better than tell, and I'll come back to that over and over and over again, because video, pictures and graphics works better than text on Facebook due to the algorithm of Facebook. Algorithm, that's a fluffy word. It's basically a machine who decides what are we actually going to show the people who follow you. And the more people interact, the more the fans interact with your content, the more it actually gets popular, meaning that the algorithm opens up for more people to actually watch it. And you make contests on Facebook, and 1 out of 1 is basically working good. People likes to get something for free and that they can win something, and Facebook is the perfect channel to that. That's also creating engagements, but be aware, do not make like clickbaits, do not do something that you cannot promise. Don't promise anything that you cannot do, and be aware that if you just do contest all the time, you will also be punished by that from the algorithm. Instagram, as I said, likable content, funny and cozy. That's also, my advice would also be, if you have limited resources for your Facebook, for your Instagram, let the youngest play. In the federations, we have a lot of young people involved. That could be players, that could be a volunteer. And if you are between 18, 19 and 25, you know more about Instagram than most people who's older than 30. Sorry to say, I'm over 30 myself, so I think it's fair to say. Let the youngsters play. And video, again, is the key. It's better to show than to tell. The website, all information you have is relevant, because who are going to visit your website? That's people who know badminton in your local community. News motivates people to come back to a page. Of course, it also motivates people to come back when they know that they can sign up for something. They need to go to a tournament. They want to know when is tickets available, whatever that could be. But that's not something that you can actually make every single day. So news, which you can create every single day based on whatever activity, whatever player, whatever it could be, could actually be an inspiration for you to actually motivate people to come back and prioritize your content. Better do one article per day, which is 100% correct and right, than do 2 on a 50% level. YouTube is streaming and VOD, video on demand. For instance, also things from the archive. YouTube is a channel has been put to bed by experts for quite some time, but it still continues to run, and it's actually running pretty well at the moment. So I'm not going to put that one to bed for sure. So I'll also consider to have video content on YouTube, but I would say start on the Facebook, start with Instagram, and of course your website, which you already have. Frequency is also a question here which I get a lot. So how much should we actually publish? How often should we publish? When should we publish? And I'll try to give you some guidelines. These are not fixed rules, because it really depends on when are your users online, how does the algorithm treat your stuff, and what are you producing and how often. But a few ground rules here based on the experience of Badminton Europe, webinars I have attended, spoken to Facebook myself, to try to get more knowledge around how can you actually publish and be successful as many times as possible. 1 to 2 daily posts on Facebook, 1 to 3 daily posts on Instagram plus story. Website, of course, there's no limit, and 1 to 3 daily YouTube videos. That are the ground rule when you do not have events. I'm talking about day-to-day use, daily use here. So it's actually not that much, but you also need to know that, for instance, if you publish 6 posts on Facebook, your follower will not see the number 6, because the algorithm will not allow people to actually see post number 6, because you only get 5 posts unless you have marked a page as a favorite and to be shown first in your feed. That's the only way you actually get more than just 5 posts in your feed every single day. That's actually good knowledge to have, because the algorithm will think that you are spamming your fans, and that's the only thing they do not want, that spamming and fake news. That's the 2 things that Facebook fear the most, and which 2 things which they fight the most. Key takeaways regarding the frequency: choose a platform which is right for your organization, and do not use all platforms. As I said, rather 2 platforms at 100% than 4 on 50%. And use the stars to promote your content and your platform. You all have a local player who is better than everyone else. You always have a player who is the one that everybody wants to be. Why not use this guy or girl as the ambassador for your platforms? It doesn't cost you anything. She's involved in your organization anyway. He is for sure one of these guys who has a lot of followers in your local community, and everybody knows him. Why not use him? And content can be used on multiple platforms, but not on the same day. And to be more specific on this, if you create a graphic, if you create a video, if you write an article, it's fair to put it on your website and on Facebook on the same day. But you never go Facebook and Instagram on the same day. You never go TikTok and Instagram on the same day, and whatever you want to do. The good thing about this is you actually have double amount of content, so why not use it again? And an article can be published twice. A graphic can be published twice, just not within the same week, or maybe not even in the same month. Don't be afraid to reuse your material which you have already provided your users once, because they might not have seen it. Planning your communication is of course also important, and you need to ask yourself a few questions when you actually start to plan your communication. So, who do we communicate to? That's who's the target group. What are we trying to sell? And by sell, I don't mean we want to sell a racket, we want to sell a shuttle, we want to sell air badminton. No. It could also be we want to sell that people should actually attend our forum, or they should attend our summer camp, or they should actually try to play badminton. That's also a product to sell. On which platform or platforms do we want to communicate? That's the 3rd question of yours. And the 4th is, how do we communicate on each platform? Because that also depends on what platform do you actually use and who is doing what. So we need somebody to take the responsibility of actually saying, you do this, you do this. And the people in charge of the areas, they of course also execute. And when are we beginning our communication? Because that's actually also a big thing and a big question I get a lot of time. When do we start and when do we finish? Your communication plan is one of the tools who can actually help you a lot on a day-to-day basis, but also when you have, for instance, new employees, when you have new ideas, or whatever that could actually be. So you need to include your guidelines on how you communicate in your organization. And you need to figure out how do we actually communicate within each area within our organization, and what do we do around each single activity that we have. You need a task of actors. Who is doing what? That's crucial, because if you don't know who's doing what, there's for sure a lot of people doing nothing. And you'll need to list your target audience. Who are you aiming at? Here is an example of what could actually be described. This is from the communication plan of Badminton Europe around our Facebook. How do we actually want to act on our Facebook? This is our Instagram. How do we use the Instagram of ours? This is how we cover the BEC circuit, elite circle, juniors, and so on. How do we actually work with that on a day-to-day basis? It's just a short description, but it helps a lot. If I go, for instance, to Belgium International, then I know, okay, this is how I do this. And I know that if my intern is going, this is how she have to do this. So everybody will be on the same page on how to use the platform and how also to cover the event. This is a circuit. It could be something else. But this is, for instance, also the circuit where you can actually see what is listed and what do we need to produce when we are traveling. This could be used for every kind of activity, for every kind of tournament. For instance, this is a piece of the plan regarding board of directors meeting. All of you have a board of directors, and you need to figure out, do we want to do anything around their meetings? Is it important for us? If yes, this could be an inspiration. If it's not important for you, all good. It's all up to you. Where do you want to spend your resources? This is a coach education level 1 course. How do we act around that? Some of you might have coach courses yourself. Some of you might even send people to this kind of coach course. If you send somebody, how do we actually cover that within your organization? That's some of the things that you need to sit down and figure out. What do we do during a year? And how do we actually want to cover that? This is an example of a coverage plan for All England. That could be your local tournament. That could be a summer camp. That could be your forum. It could be basically whatever. The most important thing is that you know what to do and you know who's doing what. On a day-to-day basis, when we cover tournaments, everybody knows what we are doing. Somebody are working from home at the office. Some are on site to do something else, and might be even 2 people on site or 2 people at home. It really comes down to how do we prioritize. The communication calendar, that's the second tool, and also one of your main tools not to miss anything, because that's the tool that keeps everybody up to date. This is just an example. This is made in an Excel sheet. Is it perfect? No. Is it useful? Absolutely. Because here we see the list of what is actually happening, which are relevant and interesting for Badminton Europe, and who's taking care of what on which platform. Use it as an inspiration if you like. This is an example for Christmas. Is it tough to actually produce content for Christmas? Yes. Do we need a plan for it? Yes. Do we have somebody who's on holiday? Of course, because Christmas is holiday season. But we know what's happening, and sometimes we need to be creative. So use this as an inspiration too. And I'm not saying that you should copy this. You need to figure out what do you want to do and what do your fans like to watch. So you need to also measure and figure out what do they actually want to see on which platform. And I will promise you, you will not be successful every time. Nobody are. So key takeaways are: a good planning is the key to success. A clean message is who is doing what. You need a clean message around your organization so everybody's on the same page, knowing who's doing what and how and when. Details are the cornerstones here. The more details you put in your plan, the easier it is to execute. That's all I have for now. Thanks for joining the webinar from Badminton Europe. Remember that you can also join our Q&A session, which will happen shortly. We will inform you all on your email when that's going to happen, and then feel free to ask whatever questions you might have. Thanks for stopping by, and I wish you a very nice day.